What happens when an entire civilization decides that being born female is itself a crime? Across millennia and continents, human societies have crafted punishment systems that targeted women not just for what they did, but for who they were. From the witch trials that consumed Europe to the honor killings that stained ancient codes with blood, female bodies became battlegrounds where power, religion, and social control played out in the most brutal ways imaginable. These weren't random acts of cruelty. They were systematic campaigns to define, control, and ultimately break the feminine spirit through ritualized terror. The ancient world established the template for gendered punishment through the crime of adultery, transforming female sexuality into a public threat requiring spectacular correction. In ancient Israel, suspected adulteresses faced the ordeal of bitter water, forced to drink a concoction mixed with dust from the temple floor while priests recited curses. If the woman's body swelled or her thigh rotted, guilt was confirmed and death followed. The ritual transformed divine judgment into community theater, with entire villages gathering to witness God's verdict played out on female flesh. Medieval Europe elevated this persecution to an art form through the witch trials that consumed centuries. The Malleus Maleficarum provided detailed instructions for extracting confessions from accused witches, describing how women's bodies concealed evidence of demonic alliance. Examiners searched for devil's marks, moles, scars, or birthmarks that proved supernatural contact. The accused were stripped naked before crowds of officials and townspeople, their bodies scrutinized for signs that justified predetermined conclusions. Those who maintained innocence faced escalating tortures designed to break both flesh and spirit. The ducking stool became England's signature weapon against women who dared challenge social boundaries. Scolds, shrews, and gossips found themselves strapped to mechanical contraptions that repeatedly plunged them underwater while crowds gathered for entertainment. The punishment combined near drowning with public humiliation, teaching entire communities that female voices carried dangerous power, requiring violent suppression. Town records describe festival atmospheres at these events, with vendors selling food and ale to spectators who cheered each submersion. Fire held special significance in female punishment, symbolizing purification through annihilation. Burning alive became the preferred execution method for women accused of witchcraft, adultery, or heresy, crimes that challenged patriarchal and religious authority simultaneously. The stakes were positioned in town squares to maximize visibility, with carefully calculated fuel loads that prolonged suffering while ensuring eventual death. Some accounts describe women given bags of gunpowder as mercy, a faster death that required paying their executioner extra fees. The branks, or scold's bridle, represented perhaps history's most psychologically calculated punishment for women. These iron masks, fitted with tongue-depressing spikes, rendered speech impossible while leaving the victim's eyes uncovered to witness public mockery. Women wore them for hours or days, paraded through streets while neighbors jeered and children threw stones. The device didn't just silence, it transformed human beings into grotesque spectacles that warned other women about the cost of verbal resistance. Honor killings wove punishment into the fabric of family structure itself, making women's bodies the battleground for male reputation. In ancient Rome, fathers held legal authority to execute daughters who violated sexual codes. Their deaths required to restore family honor. These killings took place in household courtyards with extended family witnessing, transforming murder into sacred duty. The woman's last moments became public declarations of patriarchal power, her death confirming that female sexuality belonged to men rather than women themselves. Chastity testing evolved into systematic torture disguised as moral verification. Medieval physicians developed virginity examinations that combined pseudoscience with sexual violation, their expert testimony determining whether women deserved marriage, inheritance, or life itself. These examinations took place before crowds of witnesses who validated the proceedings' legitimacy, while the accused endured intimate assault, masked as medical procedure. Young women learned that their bodies were public property, subject to inspection by any man claiming authority. The Iron Maiden, though historically disputed, embodied the principle behind countless real devices designed specifically for female punishment. Spike-lined chambers, thumb screws, and breast rippers targeted women's reproductive and nurturing capabilities, transforming motherhood into vulnerability rather than strength. These instruments appeared in torture chambers across Europe, their very existence serving to terrorize women, even when unused. The message was clear. Female biology made women inherently suspect and deserving of specialized cruelty. Forced prostitution became legalized punishment in many societies, transforming sexual violation into judicial sentence. Women convicted of adultery, theft, or witchcraft found themselves sentenced to brothels, where their bodies became public property serving male desires. This punishment combined sexual slavery with social death. Victims lost legal personhood while enduring systematic rape disguised as criminal justice. Brothel records show how quickly these women died from disease, violence, or suicide, their suffering generating profit for the very system that condemned them. The pillory took on distinctly gendered dimensions when applied to women, whose public exposure carried sexual threats absent from male punishment. Female prisoners stood bound and helpless, while crowds pelted them with stones, rotten food, and human waste. But women faced additional dangers. Sexual assault from spectators who understood that pillory victims had no legal recourse. Town authorities often positioned women's pillories near taverns, ensuring maximum male attendance and escalating violence as alcohol fueled crowd behavior. Infanticide accusations became weapons against women's reproductive autonomy, with suspected baby killers facing punishments designed to terrorize entire female populations. Women accused of murdering newborns were buried alive, burned, or torn apart by horses. Deaths so spectacular that they warned other women about challenging motherhood's sacred obligations. These executions drew enormous crowds who understood they were witnessing more than individual punishment. They were seeing demonstrations of male authority over female reproduction. Witchcraft persecution reached its zenith with the swimming test, a procedure that guaranteed death regardless of outcome. Suspected witches were bound and thrown into rivers or ponds. If they floated, guilt was proven and execution followed. If they sank and drowned, innocence was confirmed posthumously. Entire towns gathered at riverbanks to witness these trials, creating carnival atmospheres around systematic murder. The test's cruel logic revealed patriarchal fear of female power. Women who possessed special knowledge or challenged male authority were eliminated either way. Religious punishments specifically targeted women's spiritual authority, denying them access to divine power while punishing attempts to claim religious leadership. Female prophets and mystics faced accusations of demonic possession, their spiritual experiences redefined as evidence of witchcraft, requiring violent correction. Exorcism rituals became public spectacles where women's bodies were tortured to expel supposed demons, their screams interpreted as proof of supernatural battle rather than human suffering. The Scarlet Letter tradition transformed punishment into permanent marking, ensuring that female transgressions followed women throughout their lives. Adulteresses wore branded letters, distinctive clothing, or physical mutilations that announced their crimes to every observer. This punishment extended beyond the individual to encompass entire families. Children inherited their mother's shame, creating generational cycles of social death that punished female sexuality across decades. Legal systems codified these practices through laws that explicitly criminalized female behavior, while excusing male violence. Medieval legal codes established different punishment scales for men and women, with female crimes carrying disproportionately severe penalties. Women could be executed for adultery, while their male partners faced minor fines, revealing how law itself became a weapon of gendered control that legitimized systematic brutality. Some historians argue that these punishments reflected broader social instabilities rather than pure misogyny, pointing to periods when male criminals also faced brutal executions. Others contend that archaeological evidence may overrepresent spectacular punishments while obscuring everyday forms of gender-based violence. What remains undeniable is the systematic nature of female persecution, not random cruelty, but calculated campaigns to define women's place through terror. Modern scholarship reveals how these historical practices shaped contemporary attitudes toward female autonomy, with echoes of ancient punishments visible in honor killings, domestic violence, and legal systems that still treat women's bodies as public property. The instruments of torture may have changed, but the underlying logic persists. Female power requires violent suppression to maintain patriarchal order. The scars of history run deeper than individual trauma. They're embedded in legal codes, religious doctrines, and social assumptions that continue shaping women's lives today. Every woman who speaks out against injustice carries the inherited memory of those who paid with their lives for similar courage. These women's names are mostly lost to history, but their suffering echoes across centuries. Their stories remind us that progress isn't inevitable. It's fought for and won by those brave enough to challenge systems designed to break them. Which historical punishment do you find most revealing about how societies have viewed female power? The systematic nature of witch trials, or the intimate violence of honor killings? Share your thoughts on how these ancient practices continue influencing modern gender dynamics.